Welcome back to Buying Sandlot. Today, we have two youth sports tech startups announcing new pass. U.S. soccer legend criticizes youth soccer. We get into the big stories we missed while Kai was on vacation and react to those, and we'll have James Kratch on later for some more. But before we get into the episode, we have 8 days until the Buying Sandlot Summit in Philadelphia on April 14th and 15th, and tickets are still available, though they probably will sell out, so get yours quickly. You can get them at buyingsandlot.com or use the link in this show's description. We'll have executives from Huddle, Game Changer, Perfect Game, TeamSnap, all speaking, and panels around tech's heavy hitters, streaming, facilities, and consolidation. Not to mention networking, all in the state-of-the-art Switch House and Ballers. Check the agenda at buyingsandlot.com, and we now have an app. So if you are already registered, you can start connecting with like-minded individuals that will also be there. Kyle, you want to go deeper into that conversation?
Yeah. When you said 8 days, I'm wearing my Whoop. I'm willing to bet my stress level just like spiked when you said 8 days. That's a lot needs to happen in the next 8 days. A lot of work.
Yeah. We'll do it.
Oh, it'll get done. The app, go to the App Store on iOS or Google Play. Search for the Go Attend app by Swogo. That's the platform we use for the, think of them as like the Game Changer or TeamSnap for events, right? That's the platform we're using. And just when you get in, you'll be asked to log in with the email address that you used to register for the conference. And that's it. It should automatically populate. You could see the agenda. You could see attendees. You can connect and even message other attendees. We've had lots of people ask us for the database. I can't give out the whole database to everybody, but that'll be the way to connect digitally at the event. The messaging thing they tell me is in beta. It seems to work pretty well, but if it's buggy, let us know. It seems to work from what we can tell.
Yeah, exciting times ahead. It'll be here before you know it. We're excited about it. I'm starting to see more LinkedIn posts about people that are announcing that they're going. You can connect through there, but I think the app is an amazing thing. If if you're a startup, we're talking about some startups today, and you want to maybe connect with somebody that you see down the line that you need to talk to some things about. I just, the more we do this, the more news comes out and everything. I just feel like there are going to be some nice behind the scenes deals that are going to be being made at the Buying Sandlot conference.
What's our thing? Quarter of a point, right? 0.25% on all deals coming out of the event.
Quarter of a point. Yeah. So, there's a lot of moving and shaking.
If we get a quarter of a point out of everything that comes out of the event, we might not need to have an event next year. Seriously, this thing's taking on a life of its own. So that's a good problem to have. This is what we envisioned when we did it. So here we are. It's we're ready to go.
Yeah. We thank everybody who's already registered, and we thank everybody who listens to this and reads the newsletter and everything. It's been a long, fun, exciting journey. But go ahead.
By the way, if you are getting tickets, I mean, we are like no BS. We may sell out. We've sold 2 tickets since you started talking, Kyle.
Nice.
Seeing our alerts here. So we probably got like 15 to 20 left to sell. If I had to guess, there is a hard cap here, space constraint. So
good,
get them now.
Yeah, get them now. All right, let's not waste any more time. We got to get into the show because there are some companies shelling out big bucks for platforms that are able to gather leaders in the market in very niche industries. If you haven't heard, TBPN, who I think we are both fans of, we've modeled some of the show after them. They are kind of the leader in these niche maxing kind of industries, kind of shows that we've come to know. They get sold to OpenAI for $150 million on the rumor mill there. I'd love to throw it over to you to think your thoughts. Now that you've had a weekend to digest it, you have sold a media company in the past. You're obviously building a media company right now. What do you see this sale, and what do you see kind of the outlooks in terms of a niche environment that we talk about every day in the business of youth sports?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people in our audience who might not even know what TBPN is. It's just, think about what we do, but in the tech and AI space. And we've modeled, we really kind of modeled the newsletter Buying Sandlot after things like the Morning Brew, the Hustle. And even, to some extent what John Wall Street does, kind of in the general business of sports, a little bit of Sportico. We've kind of taken elements from all those things and applied it to the youth sports industry, and we launched a newsletter. But when you came on and we launched this podcast and we do lots of social clips and bring on interviews, we really looked at what TBPN was doing. They would interview the CEOs of, Sam Altman from OpenAI, Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft, you name it, like who's who, Jensen Huang from NVIDIA, who's who in tech. And in a year and a half, they've become like the go-to spot for the largest tech companies and AI companies in the world to kind of come and break news covering the business of that in a modern kind of social friendly way. So we've modeled a lot of what we've done on here after them. And it's really interesting that they got acquired by OpenAI. Great proof of concept for what we're doing here. But that would be like Dick's Sporting Goods buying this show, right? That's kind of what happened. It's an obscene amount of money, but yeah, we find it like as a good stamp of approval for what we're doing here. And I think, regardless whether it's youth sports or tech or something else, you're going to see this model like just fan out across every industry, people covering it in a more modern way. And so like good comp for us. Happy to see a much bigger niche, but happy to see a B2B media podcast get acquired for 9 figures.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. First of its kind of deal.
File that away in the notebook.
Yeah. And officially, I mean, I feel like this ushers in the era of niche maxing and making it mainstream, whether like you were talking about, do you talk about collectibles? Do you talk about technology? Do you talk about business view sports? Like I don't think TBPN will be the first one. I think they'll be the first of many coming down the line.
And historically, again, the people get bored by my media guy hat thing and tune out for the next 90 seconds or less. But in short, historically, up until the last 15, 20 years, media was served by newspapers and, radio and TV. We all know this. And then in business world, you have things like the Wall Street Journal, obviously, Fortune and larger publications. But then you had these like trade magazines, right? The old kind of stuffy, very formal, not fun to read, but industry information. These businesses did really well for a long time. But I think the people who are coming into decision-making age in all industries now, especially sports, which skews a little bit younger, they're late 30s, 40s, right? They grew up with the internet natively, or at least through college and beyond. So I think the formats for what a trade publication, which is really what buying Sandlot is, which is what TBPN is, has changed. And you're going to see this happen in every industry. But we've tried to kind of steal what they did in terms of, modernizing business coverage. That's really it.
Yeah, 100%. We look forward to keep doing that. We love having everybody on. We'll have Dave Yoo on from Onsides Inc. later on in the show. Going to be even more of an interesting conversation. We did, for the audience, we did record it on Friday, but there was some news announced from Orgo Inc. and Zoya over there. 2 tech startups announced different paths. The Onside app is now available in the App Store. Orgo announces Orgo Sync on the same day. 2 companies that I would say people do believe are relatively similar, announcing 2 different paths on the same day. What was your read? Do you need me to provide any more context for you on that one?
No. So we got two of the 3 panelists, the third being Tony Caudil from Doozy, showing up on our startups panel a week from Wednesday, which sounds crazy to say. So Onsides and Orgo, I think people in the industry, these are 2 of the more, say, like higher profile startups that were trying to unify the parent experience. And they were both leading with it pulling in data from the existing platforms, particularly around scheduling, into a single app, right? Everyone talks about how all these parents need all these apps. We've covered both of them, so won't go too into depth there. But today, Onsides, this week, Onsides and Dave announced, they're out of beta, which is important. But also they have partnerships with Athletes Untapped and EventPipe to tap into private coaching sessions and hotel rooms for youth sports parents. And it kind of signals the direction, you'll hear this from Dave later, that they're going, which is not just unifying the calendar and sort of RSVP and like scheduling logistics for youth sports parents, but trying to unify everything. Right. He wants to create an app where you can see your schedule. You can RSVP to a game. You can communicate with other parents. You can schedule a coaching session, private coaching session during a time when you don't have a team game or practice. And then you could also book a hotel room for an upcoming tournament. Right. Lots of work, but if you nail it, hugely scalable, like stunning scale you can get with these kind of consumer driven aggregation apps. The challenge, of course, in those apps is is being able to integrate with things. And we've talked a lot about interoperability. It's our favorite word here. Zoya had been building the kind of calendar app, very, similar in lots of ways to what Onsides was doing. And, from afar kind of looked like competitors, but they're kind of zagging where Dave has zigged now. And they're launching an API that will allow platforms to offer up their data to apps like Onsides and others. And it's kind of a win-win if they get it right, because it will allow the platform to get compensated for other apps using their data. And it will also allow people to build apps on top of the API. And the best example for this is what Plaid has done to the banking industry. If you log on to any financial app and you have to connect, typically when it says connect bank account here, usually that goes through Plaid, which is kind of the secure layer that will take a consumer banking app on your phone and connect it to your Chase or Bank of America account. We've talked a lot about why that needs to exist in youth sports when you have all these different platforms and it's kind of a headache to manage it all. So, I think they're trying to build the Plaid for youth sports, which is really compelling. So 2 apps that were doing the same thing, leading with scheduling. One is doubling down on kind of building the parent-centric consumer experience. And the other is trying to build, that API layer that sits between the two, that both builders and developers can hook into and platforms can offer up their data. Again, the challenge here, and we talked to Samir about this, is which platform truly decides to embrace kind of the open walls and make their data available through APIs, no matter how secure. I do think this represents at least the most compelling case I've seen for it. I haven't seen the tech, but platforms get paid for every API call, and they can control which data and who gets to access the data. So, it's a good step in the right direction, and a great topic to bring up on our startups panel next week.
It's going to be very interesting to see. I'm really excited to see who the first app is going to be. Is it going to be one of the big dogs, or is it going to be maybe someone who's maybe in that middle tier, that middleware tier? And it's all going to be kind of it's going to work due to the customers, right? It's the same way Plaid's kind of their story was. It was maybe Bank of America didn't offer Plaid, but PNC did. And so people would go over to PNC, and Bank of America saw that they were losing customers to PNC because they were integrating Plaid with all their things. So it'll be interesting to see, who's going to be the first one, who's going to take that leap, who's going to dip their toe in the water and be like, all right, you know what, we're going to integrate with it. Because right now, it'll be just interesting, I think is the right word.
And maybe some have, right? Like, I'm not in the weeds enough. We have these conversations, but not in the weeds to know who's working with who kind of in the background, right? Yeah. And behind the scenes. And hey, we're willing to give you access, but not you access. Like, I honestly don't know. Obviously, at scale, in general, there isn't like just this accepted protocol that everyone just uses. We've talked about this a lot, and you just laid it out. It's a little bit different than the finance industry in that, there's not as many platforms. There's a million banks and a million financial products to tap into, and the TAM is even way bigger than youth sports. So it's slightly different, but it's the same idea. If you have enough frustrated parents sort of demanding the ability to connect these things, especially when it relates to sometimes their kids' data, right? Your kids' participation data, their stats, sometimes video and images of your kids, right? Like, the idea to be able to connect that and bring it with you to another tech platform, there's going to be a lot of demand for that. And if a single app generates enough demand, then you're going to compel a platform to want to make themselves available to it. I think Dave used in our interview Kayak or Expedia, things like that, right? If you go to book a flight, I think Southwest sometimes wasn't on those flights or those sites. They didn't used to be. They wanted to control their own sales, right? But if you go to book a flight and that's your main spot to go, and so many people use Expedia, but like 2 airlines aren't on there, eventually there's enough demand where those airlines are like, shoot, we got to integrate with those platforms. So it's the same idea here. On the flip side, I think the platforms are hesitant to embrace this because that data is like it's an important part of their business. They're able to monetize it. As we've talked about, they're leaning into more of those consumer-friendly features themselves. They're going after the parent more, TeamSnap One, things like that. Game Changers, obviously, a bit more parent-driven than organization-driven, though they're kind of going towards the organizations. League Apps goes towards the organizations a little bit more. So, like, they're hesitant to give it up because it's proprietary to their business. So, like, I get that stance as well. So it's just really interesting to see how it shakes out. You have parents demanding one thing, the end users, but at the end of the day, these are all businesses and need to be protective of their data and the things that compel people to open up their apps. So it's a who jumps first sort of scenario, and there's no playbook, and it's risky, right? You jump in and you make your data available. Now if you're monetizing eyeballs or in-app subscriptions, and your app usage goes down, that's a problem for them too. So you have people building on top of that, just assuming eventually they're going to open the doors, and maybe they will, maybe they won't. It's a fascinating conversation.
Yeah, and Dave has some interesting quotes, so stick around for that. He talks about a little bit about the conversations he's having behind the scenes with interoperability, how the messaging might not always be at the forefront. And then we had a great example about how Apple TV does a good job of delivering eyeballs and engagement to Disney Plus when you're looking for a certain show to watch and everything. So definitely stick around for that. It's worth the wait. Let's move over to some news from the newsletter.
Last thing I would add there, it's like almost paradoxically, Disney Plus doesn't need Apple as much as maybe like Hulu or Peacock does, right? If you search for something and it says, hey, watch on Peacock, I think the bigger platforms need to embrace this stuff less because they have more power in the market. But if you're a newer platform, if it's a Fast Break or a smaller platform, I don't know, like a Sprocket or something like that, or a Byga, where they're probably more willing to jump in because it's like a feature for them. So I think you have to start small and then eventually build up enough demand that the big guys want to take the leap. That's just my view. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the biggest, maybe the big guys take the leap first and then everybody else follows. Who knows?
Yeah, it'll be interesting. All right, let's get into some news from the newsletter, and let's bring in James Kratch. All right, we got James Kratch on. James, how are you? Great newsletter today.
Thank you.
Getting back on the horse on a Monday. Kyle's fresh off a Hawaiian vacation. Let's get right into it. The first one I thought was, I sent you guys this over the weekend, Landon Donovan's comments about youth soccer, specifically club soccer. Kind of just criticized him on the Rich Eisen show and said, here, we're not developing players like the rest of the world does. Our youth soccer in this country is a disaster. And so you have all these youth clubs charge you crazy fees. It's all about winning. The kids get left behind because the clubs want to make money. The coaches want to make money. They want to win. And then the kids don't develop. And now we're seeing sort of the fruits of that. I don't think anybody would be shocked by that comment, even if you're in the club space, if you're in the grassroots youth space. I went to the U.S. Soccer's coaches convention. A lot of people were talking about alphabet soup. But on the other end, obviously U.S. Soccer has identified this because they came out with the U.S. Soccer's pathway strategy last year. What was your read, James, kind of on Landon Donovan's comments and fair, foul? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think you have to. I point out in the newsletter, he just released his memoir. The World Cup's coming up. This is a very good time to be Landon Donovan and get exposure. This is not Rich Eisen is the place where he said it most recently, but he's said things along these lines elsewhere recently. He's doing the media rounds. Yeah, I mean, look, he has points. I think the bigger question is not so much debating whether he's right or wrong. It's that, can this systemically be fixed in a way that he kind of envisions? And I think it's a much more complicated answer to that question than the general, is he right or wrong?
Because he talked about the German coach, and yes. I think this kind of goes back to the Norway thing, where it's like the U.S. should adapt the Norway model. Well, it's a lot easier to get 5 million Norwegians to do something than it is to get 300 million Americans, or how many ever play soccer to do something.
Yeah, so what I thought was really interesting. Okay, so I'm not sure the exact year, but like Landon Donovan was probably in Germany in like the late 90s. Someone can look it up, early 2000s. We, as a country, when soccer only really became a big deal, like in the 70s or 80s, we, at his time when he was a teenager, we literally might not have had enough 60-year-old soccer coaches, 60-year-old soccer Yodas with decades of experience. It's no different than like lacrosse. My dad was a high school teacher. He coached freshman lacrosse. It was literally like, hey, you got to coach something else other than football as a young teacher. Here's a book, learn about lacrosse. Well, now his high school, 20 years later, is like the best public program in the state. And, he would never be a coach nowadays with his lack of lacrosse experience. So I think that's something you also have to factor in, is that the sport is so behind the rest of the world in terms of adoption that we may have just not yet have the wise 60-year-old guy who can focus on developing, because he needs to go coach an MLS team or a college team.
The stuff with the for-profit, though, I mean, I'm just trying to think through it. I mean, it kind of applies to every sport, though, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right? I mean, like, we have I know, they say, Dominicans are developing more baseball players, right? But like at the end of the day, like the U.S. is turning out really good basketball players, really good baseball players. Football's our sport. So like it can work, right? Like the for-profit thing does churn out good athletes, even if the incentives are to make money for coaches to get paid. I have less of a in the weeds grasp on, the soccer space, maybe compared to some other sports, but is there something like structural that you're aware of in soccer that is specifically unique to soccer? I'm sure if we have Justin Miller or Brian Ang on, or some of the other soccer folks in our audience, they could answer this well too. But like, I don't know. I just like, is there something different there compared to the other sports?
I think there's two things. One, I actually was thinking about a conversation I had with Justin a couple months ago. He made the point, he believes that the whole pay to play model, which people knock, has actually built U.S. American soccer, because his point was soccer didn't have an MLB, an NFL, an NBA to sort of prime the pump and expose people and generate excitement. The clubs themselves had to kind of build the infrastructure on their own, and the only way to do that was to charge the people who were interested in soccer to then try to spread it, create access lower down the pyramid. Second thing is, we've talked about this before, our country is just so big. In England, a guy could get in his car from the FA and drive around the country in a day and meet with constituents and tell them, hey, we want to do it this way. We have 50 states. We have all time zones. We have some states have two state associations. So I think that's a big factor too. I think the third factor is obviously like players from all over the world play in the Premier League and they market themselves all over the world, but they're worried about English soccer. Like England, this is what we do. Whereas MLS, they've got teams in Canada. They probably want to have a team in Mexico City someday. So they're sort of trying to serve. It's not like they're solely focused on U.S. soccer and they don't really care about what Canada does or what Mexico does, or they're not going to withhold resources from those countries.
Interesting. Yeah. Anyway, interesting rant from Landon. I always find it funny when someone who's a product of the system comes out and like rails against the system. Although I guess he was sort of pre the current system, so maybe that's
Yeah, and he did say that he wants to make it like his life goal when he's done doing, I guess, the book. I don't know I don't know what he's doing right now, but
go coach.
He played. Oh, so he did. He was he actually was a coach of I think it was like a San Diego. It was like I'm not getting all the details right. There was like a pro team in San Diego he was involved with, and then when MLS kind of moved into San Diego, they kind of made that team go away. I think there's like a USL club or something. Another interesting thing about Landon Donovan is like he had a choice. I believe his father was Canadian. Like he could have gone to the Canadian system. He chose to play in the U.S. and that's kind of becoming a growing issue. I forget the guy's name off the top of my head, but I believe there was a guy who was eligible to play for the U.S. men's team that said, no, like I'd rather just wait and try to get on Germany's team, and that created controversy. We're seeing a lot of issues where, like, especially World Cup time with the expanded World Cup, there are guys who are from European nations who are kind of like on the borderline of their national team, so they're finding ancestry in like other countries. I believe. I
mean, nobody was worse than the World Baseball Classic.
Yeah,
the World Baseball Classic was.
I believe we wrote that a couple months ago. I think Germany was like, whoa, if we're gonna have guys who are suddenly competing for countries in Africa but we developed them in our feeder system, we got to get compensated for this somehow. So that's going to become a thing too.
I suspect we're going to get emails and I feel like there's very strong opinions on this topic. This one's going to elicit lots of listener comments.
Yeah, I mean, Kyle, I mean, you got two kids that go through soccer right now. Landon was like
one playing, yeah.
But like he's like the 8-9-year-old coaches suck basically. Like that, he was like really tough on those guys. He's like they're terrible. Like, has your experience been better?
Our plays travel for our local org, and they do a pretty good job. Like they have a pretty good, sort of municipality run travel program here. There are a couple clubs we're looking into. We'll see. I got my 7-year-old out on a treadmill 24/7. No, I'm kidding.
But
but there's a lot in this area. Yeah.
I say, Kyle, I'm glad you brought that up. Because I thought that was kind of strange. Because like we hear all this talk about the rising costs and like rec league. Well, rec leagues are volunteers. Like on one hand, you're saying you want to like get more kids involved and reduce the pressure. On the other hand, it's like you're saying that unless the guy's European, they can't coach an 8-year-old. Whereas like to me, it's sort of like, shouldn't 8-year-olds just like be kind of learning the game and having fun and staying safe? Like, is that the point of 8-9-year-old soccer?
Well, yeah, and I think it's the MLX. I heard Kyle Albrecht from MLS. I think he's now with Varsity Cheer, I think. But he was at Next Up talking about this. I think it was him. And he said up until like age 10, 12, it's about, we try not to focus on winning. Like I'm sure the teams do, but like at the institutional level, it's like we try to focus on playing time and development because, we don't want to have a kid ride the bench who maybe just peaks a little bit later. So I think people are thinking about it in the right way. Who knows whether that gets down to the level. The irony is my son's volunteer coach was European this year. So, there you have it. But yeah, I mean, I think your mileage varies, right? You get someone who's a volunteer who didn't play. The other guy played D2 or D3 soccer, so they know what they're doing. Like they're good coaches. But they hired the volunteer-led rec association here hired an outside trainer to come in every Tuesday. They practice Tuesday and Thursday, but Tuesday was run by an outside trainer, who ostensibly had like a cut above on the skill set and the training. So like you're even marrying, just my example of one here, you're seeing somebody marry the nonprofit and the for-profit to serve it. And the soccer coaching below age 7 here is actually run through I-9. So through the Township League actually outsources it to I-9. So more than any other sport, you do see kind of those like partnerships, at least at this level, at least like with my eyeballs, what I've seen.
One more interesting thing before we move on. He also mentioned how like he said like when you're 17 years old and you don't make either a national team, you're not invited to go out and play like in Europe or something like that, you kind of just fall by the wayside. And soccer definitely has that kind of issue because it's not like the MLB or the NFL or the NBA where it's like, hey, this 17-year-old, he can get recruited, he can go low D1, maybe D2, but the transfer portal can happen. I just feel like MLS, the college, I could be wrong on this, but is the college structure that good? Or, like for the national team, like is there a big feeder from the college universities into the national team and beyond? Or is it mostly these club programs where these kids are identified at like 10, 11, 12, 13 years old? And
yeah, it's tough. Look, I think like obviously men's soccer, you're starting to see not as much as other sports, but programs are getting cut just because the cost. I think geography is also kind of a conference affiliation's an issue. Like my alma mater, University of South Carolina, had a men's soccer team. The SEC doesn't sponsor men's soccer, so Carolina was in Conference USA when I was in school. I believe they're in the Sun Belt now, so they're kind of going all over the place, which adds to the cost. I wonder if MLS should think about subsidizing D1 men's college soccer and women's soccer too. Maybe that's an answer to try to, like the NHL is very aggressive with doing feasibility studies to try to get more D1 schools to start hockey programs. Like LIU launched a hockey program kind of out of nowhere a couple of years ago, in part because the Islanders were like, hey, we're building this new arena. We need tenants. We want to grow the sport. We're going to help you do this. I wonder if MLS should take that approach and try to help these schools start soccer programs, support them so they have better places to put these kids that, as Landon said, kind of fall by the wayside.
Let me ask you guys something. I haven't fully thought this through, but as you're talking, I'm thinking through this. With NIL and direct payments, and then the other trend of AI-enabled education, coupled with the extraordinary, extreme costs of higher-end colleges, right? I saw one, I forget what private school it was, is now like $99 or crossed $100,000 a year just in tuition, not even room and board. I think I read that. Either way, it's crazy expensive. is like, do you need college athletics, right? Like, I mean, they're already in the major sports. This is like the opposite of what IMG is trying to do with add more athletes, right? But like, is there some point where people just pull the ripcord en masse and say, we're seeing it at the youth level. Hey, we're taking our kid out of public school. We're putting them in this private academy that has 2.5 hours a day of alpha school. And then they specialize on baseball for 3 hours. The public school is free, or the private school maybe, may cost money if it's coming from a private school. But generally, this is people leaving public school, which is free. Are you going to see people just say, I'm not going to go to college. I'm going to go to some AI-backed sports academy or sports club that serves 18 to 21-year-olds, where I could learn as much as I would learn in college with the help of AI in a fraction of the time for a fraction of the cost, and play something more resembling a minor league sport, which is ultimately what college is, right? It's just an extension of this club model we've talked about. But like, why does it have to stop at age 18 when kids go to college? Does that make sense? Like, is there a world where it just completely falls apart and people are like, I'm not going to Auburn to play baseball. I'm going to just stick with who's the guys we talked to from Texas, the
Bennett.
baseball academy. Yeah, right. Bennett's just going to run through 21 and we'll learn there. Am I missing something?
I mean, for James, I'm sure you got a better point on this, but like, I'm thinking about IMG. They do post-grad years. I think post-grad years is going to become pretty big. It's basically JUCO, but you stay at IMG and you just do a couple years. Maybe, maybe you need that.
Yeah, IMG is maybe the wrong example. Maybe the best example of someone that just extends it past high school, Spire and anybody else.
Yeah. So I think it could that kind of model could work if the schools themselves, like we always talk about, like the potential crazy outcome of there's no Alabama football team. The University of Alabama licenses its IP to a private company that has a football team that is Alabama and Crimson Tide and wears all the uniform and the logos and everything. I guess in that situation, you could create a scenario where every SEC football program is really a football club, and maybe there's some sort of relationship where the kids take some classes at the university, or they take a different form of education that translates into credits at the university. I don't know. I tend to think that the allure of playing Division I, especially in sports like football and basketball, competing for a national championship, all of that is going to negate the drive for a club at the major sports. Maybe lower, like a tennis, a golf. It could be different.
Yeah, I'm thinking it may be more prevalent there as we talk through it. But like, it's almost the opposite. IMG is saying, hey, like everyone wants to go to college, make more sports available in college, right? People will pay to play. It's good business for college. There's demand for it. Create more teams, find a way to structure it. That's one route. I mean, that may be the correct route. They've obviously thought this through more than I have. I'm just thinking about the opposite world where it's like, okay, college is so expensive, and we're seeing at the younger levels this trend of like being able to learn, with AI in these academies. And I still don't think these are the best things, but it's happening regardless. You could learn in half the time. Eventually, someone's going to say, you know what? I'm not going to be a pro athlete, right? I'm not going to be an NFL player. So I don't need to, well, you get paid to play the big sports, right? But the soccers and on down the stack, the smaller sports, you're often, in some cases, you're still paying to go to that school to play the sport. So you're paying $50,000, $60,000 a year because you want to go to college and play a sport for your college. But is there a certain point where you're just like, you know what? I don't want to pay for the education. I was only doing it so I could play D1 volleyball or whatever. And is it Love B or something like that? You're like, I'm just going to do that until I'm 21 and be semi-pro, and I could learn for a fraction of the price without the college branding. I don't know. It's just like this whole, I don't know. I'm bullish on like college getting disrupted because of cost, but
yeah, no. I think
it's a very half-baked opinion.
You're on the right area, and I think like a lot of people's brains would go to like the major two sports, but like I think you've got something where it's like and we see it with Marshall cuts swimming, and then swimming they protest and they bring it back. Like I think you're kind of taking these colleges, these sports that these colleges don't even care about, these ones that actually cost them money. You're kind of taking them off their hands in this model.
You're taking them off your hands, but I think the big issue is that those colleges need those sports because
Why so?
Because you bring in athletes, you bring in students who enroll. See, I think that's the massive fundamental issue that is not given enough credit. These college athletics exist as a tool to promote the school, to get kids to enroll, to apply, to come, to donate after their great experience when they graduate. You know, we watch college football games. Like, one of the big reasons why the Big Ten wanted to, add Rutgers and Maryland and then USC and UCLA, besides the TV media rights, is that now those commercials are going to play nonstop. And you're a kid who lives in Maryland. You're watching a Terrapins game with your dad. You're now seeing commercials from Minnesota and Michigan State. I think that's one of the big issues these schools don't realize. Like, I'll give you a perfect example. When I covered Rutgers, the NCAA, financial disclosure would tell you that the women's volleyball program lost, let's just say, $3 million. What it wasn't telling you was that the women's volleyball team was paying $4 million in tuition to Rutgers. So I think that's one of the big issues. When you have a rowing program with 100 women in it and 9.5 scholarships to be shared among them, those kids are paying out-of-state tuition, in-state tuition, room, board. So I think that's the issue, is that these schools need to realize that football and men's basketball and women's basketball and baseball in the South, it's a business. Wrestling in the Midwest. Everything else is just an academic endeavor, no different than, I used to always say this, does the dance troupe get told to break even? Does the biology department get told, hey, like, you need a new lab? You come up with the $30 million to pay for it, guys. No,
but let me, I agree. You're spot on, by the way. Like, the colleges need these, right? Malcolm Gladwell's written about this. Like, it increase your chances of getting in if you play a sport, and it's a way. He has this argument that it's a way to, I'm gonna get it wrong, but it's something to do with like affirmative action, right? Like, it's a way to, kind of color the, color the demographic mix of a school by promoting certain sports versus others. Slightly controversial opinion, but the schools need this. My point is more on the demand side for those sports where you're getting paid, basketball, football. Yeah, going to college makes great, because at age 18, 19, 20, 21, it's your best chance of getting paid potentially a lot of money to play a sport and pick up an education as a side benefit along the way, right? But for those other sports, do you lose the demand from the athletes? Because you said they're paying $4 million in tuition to play volleyball, right? Do they just decide, you know what? Is it this trend in education where it's like, we don't need to pay this collective group of 20 people or whatever, it doesn't need to pay $4 million in tuition. We could learn. We don't, the only reason we're going to one of these large public schools or a really good private school is so we can go and learn, but also play the sport we love. Can they just do that sport in a club environment and learn at a much less expensive school, or some sort of this hybrid learning extended past the young ages? That's my point. Like, at a certain point, are the people who aren't getting paid to play sports, but they're paying the player, like, oh, why are we paying $50,000 a year to play volleyball under such and such college's umbrella? And again, I'm asking you because, like, I know you're more well steeped in this than I am.
I think it would probably depend on, like, what's the experience that these, like, clubs could provide the kids. Because, like, in some areas, yeah, like, if you had a school that, like, had a really nice facility, and like, I don't know, I'm thinking about, like, Texas. You, in theory, I could play for the whatever club volleyball team exists, and we could drive around the state and play a bunch of school. I think that's the issue, is, like, yes, you can pay less to go to school, but how much does the quality experience cost at a club level, in terms of, like, it's not miserable, you got a nice place to practice, you got a nice place to play, the uniforms are nice, all of that. Because I think a lot of club sports,
I think we're seeing investment in that now, right? And maybe
a lot of
the soccer pathways are love B
are kind of miserable. It was like, I remember when I was in school, it was like, oh, they started a club football team. Well, I'm not going to play football in South Carolina if I could play football again. It was like, well, yeah, like, they practice from like 10 to midnight every night, and every road game is like 5 hours away in the back of somebody's truck, and Then you got to go to class on Monday when you're injured and all that stuff. Like, that's why I think that they'll probably like how cheap, how affordable could a good experience that's comparable to what they get at a college sport be provided?
Well, we got a lot of private equity entering the space that want to distribute some dollars.
We do.
That might want to slap, hey, here's the so-and-so PE faceless supervillain volleyball team, and they're going to play in the Northeast, and we're going to fund it, and we're going to find a way to kind of break even or get in the black a little bit. Anything else before we move on?
No, I guess my whole thing assumed that there's a world where people begin pushing back on college in general for the prices, and
I agree.
And then that extends to the athletes playing. Maybe that would have been a much more succinct way of playing it. To bring it full circle, by the way, I didn't realize that Landon Donovan went to IMG, right? So so I'm just looking at his Wikipedia here. By the way, in his Wikipedia picture as of 2024, not a great hairline, right?
He did actually talk about that on his media tour
because in this interview. Phenomenal. He looks like JJ Redick. He looks amazing.
He crowdsourced a lot of his fans to find out where he should get his hair transplants.
They're excellent.
Yes.
He's stunning. He's stunningly handsome man.
Yeah, he went really viral, I think, the last World Cup for how bad his hairline was. So.
It looks like every single hair was like individually placed.
Yes. Yeah, it was tough look.
You go to Turkey? I know a lot of people go. Don't they go to Turkey for that? Isn't that big in Turkey?
Turkey's Turkey's the big one. Turkey's the big one. Let's move on to the seventh inning stretch. This is where people kind of, maybe leave the podcast. We don't want you to be doing that. We want you to get up, stretch your body. We're going to go quick heavy hitters. All right. From what you've missed, Kyle, since you were away, that me and James have talked about in the newsletter. First one, Senator Cory Booker called out the price of youth sports, saying we cannot allow it to become a luxury good available only to those with means. We need to take on the big companies that are driving up prices for their unjust profit. Congress needs to be more aggressive and fund youth sports in our country. Pretty good criticism there. Definitely went after people pretty pointedly. What are your thoughts on that from a potential 2028 presidential candidate?
Yeah, I saw TeamSnap reposted this article you did, James, I guess, on LinkedIn. I think it's just a part of a trend. I can't remember if we included it as a prediction for 2026. But this whole thing I think happened faster than I thought. We wrote last summer, New York Times covering the costs is just going to start this wave of coverage over the next couple of years, and you're going to get regulation and pushback. That cycle has compressed into like 4 to 6 months, and we're now at the point where Cory Booker's talking about it. So on one hand, I think it's almost better it's happened so quickly because it will kind of force the industry to stay ahead of this, and it's not something that is slowly festering. I think a lot of times regulation creates opportunity, and I think this is something we're still working on a last minute panel at the summit to kind of talk about these things. It could be a danger, right, when Congress gets involved, but I think that their sites are going to turn from college down to the youth level in these coming years, probably leading up to the 2028 election. And it could also create lots of opportunities. I think around cost and regulation coming into the space, I would look at some of the people we're going to have in the preparedness and protection panel, like Anchored, like Players Health Insurance, like Go4 Physical Safety. I think those companies, if nothing else, stand to benefit if Congress and governments get more involved. You see the privatization. If there's any sort of regulation anywhere, it's probably first and foremost going to address like safety and security and standards. So I think those companies could win. And then it's about like who can shape that conversation in their direction, right? In youth sports as things are getting consolidated. So it's the beginning of a long conversation of, I think, politicians and public officials talking about the cost of youth sports. But I don't always think that's bad for the business community because a lot of times those things to address the costs include subsidies, and there's some amount of regulation that hurts some people, but others win. So like ultimately, I think regulation is good for at least the bigger businesses that are being created here. But it'll be a hot topic.
Yeah, I thought this connecting the dots. Last December, they had that House hearing on youth sports. Catherine Van Dyke, the former FTC attorney in the Biden administration, was very forceful. She talked about the possibility of antitrust law being used in youth sports. Then he talks about big companies, unjust profit. You can just sort of see dots connecting. And I think what the real wild card of all of this is that while you would think, okay, if Democrats are pushing this, even if they have the House, obviously they don't have the White House, the Trump administration has been sort of surprisingly aggressive in antitrust areas so far, especially when like general consumers are involved, like, ordinary markets. The president's very big on sports, as we might talk about later. Mm-hmm. I don't think he's going to have much success getting anything done in college. This could be kind of a perfect storm where all of a sudden, even if Democrats control the House or the Senate or both, they can work with the White House on this. It could have a surprise impact. So I think that's something to watch too.
What even is the antitrust conversation in youth sports, though? It's so fragmented. Like, you can't even make it with a straight face. Like, what am I missing there? I mean, no one is even remotely big enough to.
I guess you could argue if the facility also runs the league or something. It's tough. I agree. I think it's a tough argument to make, but will they try to make it? It's just something. Look, I live in New Jersey. Cory Booker knows how to get attention to his causes. He doesn't seem like a guy who would just throw out a couple of social media posts and then never talk about it again.
Well, that's the thing. It's a bipartisan talking point, right? No politician loses by saying, hey, it should be cheaper for your kids to play sports, right? The number of voters in the industry compared to the general population is very, very small in that regard. Yeah, interesting. I've heard this idea, the country, I think in general, is trying to encourage participation, and I know the 63 by 60 for 2032, the Project Play thing, that all kind of falls into it. But the theory I've heard is like, hey, we're entering uncertain times. The country needs soldiers, right? And youth athletes wind up making really good soldiers right now, and we have a population that is skewing on the sedentary, video game, smartphone addicted, not in great health side of things, and like kids who grow up playing football and lacrosse and rowing, make great soldiers for better
U.S. Army.
Like that's the
U.S. Army just got into the facility game.
Yeah,
right. There you go. So I mean, that's the kind of like big picture, the invisible hand thing. Above my pay grade, that stuff.
I think you could see them get more involved. One of the things that I remember was floated into all the talks about what college football could look like is, does the Pentagon step in and be like, hey, like it was like.
You wrote about this.
Yeah, like most of the Greco-Roman wrestlers that go to the Olympics, they all belong to the the exceptional athlete program. They're all in the Marine Corps, or the Army, the Navy. Does the Pentagon say, hey, swimming, like we're sponsoring swimming, and if you're Katie Ledecky, like you're gonna be in the military, but like you're gonna compete and you're gonna be a ambassador. Other guys might serve after they finish their college careers. I think that is something we could definitely see as this evolves.
Peter Thiel putting on the enhanced games valued at $1.2 billion. I don't know if the Army, what their stance on PEDs and everything are, but I mean, he's got a whole war chest of players right there. Enhanced athletes.
If you're trapped behind enemy lines and need the rucksack through the Iranian mountains, you might. I don't think you care what they're on.
Yeah, I want the guy on TRT and peptides. All right, I'll tell you that one. While you were going, Kyle, Ascent Group finalizes acquisition of LiveBarn. Not much you missed too much on this one, but CEO Gary Swither did give a couple interviews to Sportico and SBJ, and I thought he had some pretty interesting quotes. One was, we're looking forward to doing a lot more. Another was, the user experience left something to be desired. It doesn't make sense for the end user to have to use 4 or 5 apps to be a fan of a sport. I think something we're going to talk about with Dave Yoo later in this episode. And then the last one was, the company also will look at sports that are up and coming and growing nicely, such as volleyball and swimming. So if I take these comments and I read into them, it seems like you should look at a little bit of consolidation through acquisition for Ascent. And Gary Swither does not like fragmentation, being a father of 2 athletes growing up. Anything interesting there?
I mean, I believe he's coming to the event. It seems like this is this is just the latest in a trend of, consolidation PE-backed consolidation, starting with one asset and moving potentially in the other sports. I do note that LiveBarn hockey is inside, volleyball is inside, swimming is inside. So maybe that's their tilt, right? GTCR-backed Ascent, acquiring things that are inside, distributing LiveBarn streaming across other indoor sports where you have these fixed installs, which is different than a lot of the outside sports. So, LiveBarn feels like it would work really well as an overhead camera for swimming, as a guess. So I don't know. I don't know their direction, but certainly, we're seeing this playbook play out now. Find a tentpole acquisition and then expand to multi-sport.
Yeah, I'm just curious to see, do they move away from fixed cameras? Just because a lot of ice venues are just hockey, a lot of aquatic centers are just swimming. When you look at a game changer, they obviously are looking to expand their sports, but let's take Rocker B Ranch with the Unrivaled announcing their flag academy. Rocker B is a baseball and softball complex that's going to host flag football in December. Can you flip on the QR code and stream flag football, even though that's not technically a game changer sport? What's it look like? Remains to be seen. I just wonder how LiveBarn expands to other sports if they're kind of dependent on each facility. There are other sports besides hockey already on LiveBarn, but that's just because they happen to be in a facility that can host those sports.
Yeah, and like Kyle said, he will be at the summit. So if you have a pitch, you might want to corner him in the League Apps Lounge or the Game Changer Happy Hour, the Morgan Lewis VIP breakfast,
or the Stout VIP Lounge.
Yes.
Or what about let's just broker the deal live on the TeamSnap live stream. just for everyone.
Quarter of a point.
Quarter of a point. Last one before we get out of here, before we get over to the interview with Dave Yoo. TeamSnap, Kyle, you're obviously on this interview. TeamSnap announces that they gave back $20 million to youth sports organizations through branded partnership. TeamSnap loves hanging their hat on this, being the leader in giving back in the space. It's an incredible milestone. So I don't blame them there. A couple things that he did say that I was really interested in. TeamSnap going and integrating live stream with sponsorship. They seem to get the sponsorship, and they're very good at telling the story of sponsorship. And not to mention that he did throw out there, $3.2 trillion of spending power in their customer base and everything. So I thought that was a nice little caveat. So anything as you digested that interview from last week that went live?
Great positioning, by the way. Total aggregating the spending power of all of your customers. I'm going to do that for buying Sandlot, and we're going to put that in our sponsorship deck, right? $2 trillion of B2B spending power when you combine all 17,200 people in our audience. No, I love that. Look, I think they are rightfully proud of giving back, that amount of money. The industry, we've talked a lot about how sponsorship can subsidize cost. I think what the real question becomes is outside the control of a TeamSnap or anybody else who is facilitating the sponsorships, but it's the participation layer, the operators. How much of the money, especially as there's more and more larger for-profit operators, how much of those sponsorship dollars eventually go back to subsidizing lowering cost? I think that's where you're going to see public policymakers get involved in the conversation. Hey, you're making this much more money. Your profit margin is X percent. You got to pass some of that back to participation. I think that's what the conversation will be around. So,
TeamSnap's getting in front of it too, which I think is a great. I mean, I don't think we've, to my knowledge, have seen a platform that's as in your face isn't the right word, but tells the story like TeamSnap does.
Yeah, I mean, you have Base Sports Group out there doing it at events. They'll be at our event, Priority Partnerships. They do it as Dan largely as an agency. So I think they do this at some scale. I think TeamSnap is saying, hey, we got millions of people here. We've given back millions of dollars, and they're one of the few, along with the other tech platforms. I know Fast Break has talked about this. John talked about it on our podcast, but probably a little earlier in the game than TeamSnap is in that regard. But hey, we have the digital footprint, and we can now reach the physical footprint and marry those two things. And Pete and Nicole said in an interview with them, that is where the rubber really meets the road here. The sponsors they've talked to have said, listen, digitally, we can go to Facebook or Google and we can reach these people. That part's not a problem. What we really like is the ability to take the digital that these youth sports tech platforms have and then marry that with physical activations and sponsorship. So that's where they're really well positioned. But that also doesn't scale real well. You need hand-to-hand combat, on-the-ground communications to run these activations, so that within your app you're seeing a State Farm ad on the soccer goal, and there's also a State Farm banner at the field, and there's a State Farm booth, signing people up for home and auto. Maybe Jake from State Farm comes to the big the next Unrivaled flag tournament or something like that, right? So you could see how all this ties together. But I think that's where this really matters, is physical and digital, and marrying them. So the tech platforms are really well positioned to do that.
All right, let's get over to our interview with Dave Yoo from Onsides. Dave Yoo, Onsides, first 3-time guest in buying Sandlot's small but mighty history. We appreciate you coming on. You have a huge announcement. You got a big announcement for the people. Go on. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, no, it's been a great journey to build Onsides alongside, buying Sandlot. And yeah, I wanted to announce that we are coming out of our beta. We were in a bit of a quiet 6-month beta, gathering great feedback and testing stuff out, stress testing the system, and excited to announce that we're available on both the Apple App Store and the Google Play Store.
Let me just get we don't. Yeah, congratulations.
Thank you. It's really exciting, and this is just a start. So
I was just going to say, the journey's done now, right? Nothing left to do. Right?
I mean, isn't that how the world works, right? You just kind of put it out there, and you build it, they'll come. No, it's we have a lot of exciting but fun work ahead of us, and in conjunction with this announcement. I want to take the opportunity to also highlight one of the couple of the exciting partnerships that we're going to be launching with, one of which is this great private coaching network called Athletes Untapped. They've got this network of over 3,000 private coaches all across the United States, across all the major sports. They are really cool in the fact that the way that they've built up their system, that's coming from D1 athletes, both husband and wife. They were D1 athletes. They're coaches as well. And they're building this system for the athletes and the families in a really cool and very conscientious way. So I was very excited to partner up with them. And we are offering that on top of the scheduling that we're consolidating for users on Onsides. So that, as well as a partnership with a company called EventPipe, to power hotel booking. We know when games and tournaments are scheduled. We know where they are. It's an obvious kind of a no-brainer moment to offer up a hotel booking option right within the app. So these are just two of the exciting early examples of, with this kind of consolidated two-way synced schedule for parents, all of these applications of youth sports can get layered on top of it and be that all-in-one kind of destination for parents.
So we had you on back in the summer when you were coming out with your private beta, and you really positioned this as the parent-friendly youth sports app that was able to consolidate schedules and communications across a small number of major tech platforms. And I think that number is large now. I think it's up to 7 that you're able to integrate with. And the idea here is really the parents have a one-stop shop app where they can see schedules, communicate that they're attending or not attending a game, and then an AI assistant that kind of proactively serves up reminders that, hey, your son's game's coming up and it's raining. Just be mindful. Here's the weather. Here's how long it's going to take you to drive from point A to point B. That was sort of the 1.0 beta version. And I think since then, you're obviously layering in Athletes Untapped and EventPipe. But if I'm understanding correctly, I think the big picture here is to go beyond just sort of unifying the calendar experience for parents, but really giving parents a one-stop youth sports everything app where they can see schedules, communicate with each other, coordinate on things like ride sharing, book training lessons, book hotels, maybe even shop for equipment. Is that an accurate sort of description of what you're trying to build, the everything app for youth sports?
Yeah. We call it sort of the all-in-one youth sports app for parents. I think it goes without saying that schedules drive a lot, if not all, the decisions that parents have to make in their youth sports journey. And since we've really done we've done a lot of the hard work of consolidating the schedule. We still have a lot more connections that we need to support, but as you said, we support up to 7. We found, especially with talking with users and other parents, that having these decisions of gear, travel, training, you said private coaches, we're also going to be powering eventually clinics and camps. Camps is a big one that parents have told us about, saying, hey, it's the off season, it's summer. I have to talk to other parents and do Google searches for camps and listen to my daughter's friends groups of like which camps to go to. If there's one destination that I could go to find all of that information, and not just find it, but to book it and to coordinate with other team parents, that's really the grand vision that we're going for here.
Do you ever think about, I mean, obviously the space is so fragmented, everybody knows this. The way I see it, I mean, you guys really are leaning on existing platforms and interoperability in some way, shape, or form to kind of unify the experience. The way I know we've used this example before, the way so many like finance apps allow you to log into your bank accounts or do your budgeting through 4 or 5 different accounts you have. That's the example I've always used when I've talked to you. Do you ever think about going the route of, hey, like for camps, like maybe we could build our own first party thing? Or are you always like, no, we're just going to work with this way? We're like platform agnostic. Whatever the leading platform is, we're able to tie into them and others. And that, gives us a competitive advantage versus trying to just build a platform in a specific vertical by ourselves.
Definitely the aggregation model has been proven in, as you said, in fintech, but look at the Expedias and the Bookings and the Kayaks. I mean, it's like saying if Kayak suddenly became like a travel agency, right? That's just not their model, and there's plenty of demand, consumer demand, and a lot of supply on the flip side, that this sort of model has a ton of legs to provide tremendous value, not just for the end user, the consumer, but also the various parties who can specialize in their own verticals. So adopting that approach, our thinking is that, again, there's tons of fragments out there, right? Like, let's not build another fragment and fight that battle. Let's just unify it all and present the most relevant, the most frictionless, and the most sort of rewarding experience for the parents.
Google Play, App Store, free, right?
Yes, so that's a great point. Coming from the B2C world and playing this B2C angle that we feel has been kind of missing in the youth sports sort of product technology world. Our app is 100% free. It's going to be no ads, no subscription. One of our core missions here is that we believe that parents don't need to spend more to organize their lives. So we're going to be offering that to the parents for free, and then we're just going to monetize in areas that they already spend, whether it's gear, training, equipment, travel. That's where parents are already spending there. So we're just going to be facilitating that and taking a very small cut of that to enable this product for the youth sports parenting community.
I know one of the things you said to me, which I thought was really, really interesting during our first call, because I think one of my first questions is, how many platforms want to work with you? How many, don't? But you said, one of the things you said is like, we can actually drive, as we get bigger, we can drive volume and engagement back to a lot of these platforms. And one of the examples you gave was like live streaming, right? Your platform's a great way to serve up a reminder to a parent that, hey, this game is happening now. And oh, by the way, there's a live stream, but you got to hop over to this app to watch it. We're not like embedding the live stream. So, I think you sort of position it as a win-win. Do I have that right?
Yeah. There are so many things that we are consciously we're not going to try to do everything, right? We're not building everything. What we want to be is that always kind of omnipresent touch point for the parents, right? And again, the schedule drives it all, right? The schedule will tell you, to your point, in this specific use case, there is a game coming up and there's a live stream. Ideally, as we partner with more and more of these platforms, we can deep link parents directly to that live stream. so that they don't have to, assuming that Onsides is that first touch point for them, that'll be that sort of control panel, that sort of a heads-up display of sorts, right? Of like, where do I need to go? And that's just one of many examples that I think we can be that kind of conductor, right, for the parent. And our AI assistant is a great vehicle tool for us to actually surface those things, both at the macro level of like the streaming, but also down to the transactional levels of like, I need equipment for a training next week, or I need a hotel. Like the assistant will proactively serve that stuff up. But the whole point is that we are that kind of command center that can drive people to these various destinations.
Well, Dave, if youth sports doesn't work out, I know there's a lot of old baseball dads that would love for you to integrate this app into the ESPN schedule so they know when Friday Night Baseball's on Apple TV or NBC Peacock or everything like that. Because I know, at least in the Delaware Valley with the Phillies games, whenever they're on another site other than NBC Sports, people freak out all the time. Kyle's having conversations with his dad, telling him where the game is and everything. So I think you got even some expansion models and maybe 2.0, 3.0 and stuff. So,
actually, you bring up a good point. I don't know if you guys use Apple TV at all, but when I want to watch an event or a movie or a TV show, if I search for it in Apple TV, do you notice that like it gives you a list? Oh, watch it here on Hulu, watch it here on. So it's a similar approach, right? Where Apple is banking on the fact that Apple TV, the app, is a central hub for whenever people turn on their TV, and it directs them to those. So they're not, they're still driving people to quote competitor streaming services, but they're trying to act as that hub. So that's
a great comparison. I'm glad sort of you brought it up, Kyle, and then you double clicked on it, Dave. Apple's been, I think, slowly chipping away at this kind of quietly over the years. And I've probably noticed in the last 6 to 12 months, actually relying on that exact feature more. It's like, hey, I want to watch this show. I don't want to buy the whole season. I don't know if it's on Netflix or Prime. We did it last night with Zootopia. My kids wanted to watch Zootopia too. And I was like, I think it's Disney. I couldn't remember if it's Disney or DreamWorks. So I just spoke into the app and it was like, oh, it's on Disney Plus. I'm like, good. I don't have to pay for it, right? I'm already paying for Disney Plus. It actually works now. Sometimes you'll kind of click over, especially for sports. It'll be like, hey, this game's on. You're like, oh, I want to watch it. And then boom, you're hit with a paywall to sign up for Fox Sports Plus or whatever it is. So like, what are some of the challenges in that you've seen so far? And what are some of the wins like you've seen being able to kind of surface this at a centralized level and then pass it back to a platform? Because I know it's not a perfect process. Every integration is a little bit different. Apple hasn't nailed all of them, so what's that been like? And what's the, just the feedback over the beta process been like for you guys in general?
As you consolidate or attempt to consolidate fragments of an ecosystem, I think a lot of the challenges come down to the sort of the needs of the various apps and the kind of the genesis of the apps. Like we could. It's funny is that as we're doing these connections that we're supporting within Onsides, my co-founder and I can kind of tell who built the system, like in the sense that we could tell one of them, for instance, we could tell that someone with a coach's mentality built it because the feature set and the infrastructure and the architecture rather was designed with like very coach friendly features, from the administrators to the operators. But the one thing that we've found consistently over these 7 integrations is that the parent experience was never kind of forefront, the way that it's all architected out. So that's been some of the challenges, right? Is just kind of navigating the fragmentation upon the fragmentation, if you so to speak here, of the systems, and trying to normalize all the data and create that interoperability within our own system first and foremost, so that it can be consumed by the parents in a meaningful way. That's been a big challenge for us, but I think we've done an extremely amazing job at that already in just like the 6 months of beta test usage.
Fragmentation, huge word. We say it every time on this podcast. We write about it all the time. We've probably said it 1,000 times on this pod since we've been doing this for the last 3 months. Interoperability. Kyle talked about it with Samir and everything. Your conversations with people in your industry, people behind the scenes and stuff. Are they more open to interoperability, you think, going forward? Are people kind of, I know Samir was pretty pro interoperability, but it needs obviously two to tango and stuff. Are you having any conversations with people behind the scenes that, as youth sports becomes more professionalized?
The messaging is very pro interoperability. Everyone talks about it. Everyone says it's necessary. But what we're starting to see is that for a variety of reasons, when rubber meets the road, it's unnerving to some, I would say, is kind of a word to use. It's different. It is, I don't know if you want to use the word disruptive, that's kind of overused, but I think when you really start peeling the onion about what interoperability means, both at a technical level, a product level, at a business model level, right? It becomes nebulous. It becomes unknown. But people keep coming back to this need for it. And I think what we're faced with is a wide spectrum of folks from a variety of the fragments within youth sports, whether it's the team apps, whether it's the e-commerce side or the training side or the recruiting side, from a variety of angles. Everyone I've talked to, the good news is that they all readily acknowledge that they're part of the fragmentation, and the parents and the families and the athletes eventually essentially bear the brunt of that. And so I think the sentiment is very strong, to answer your question. When it comes down to how do you address that, I think it's still very early days on how that can be done. Our thesis is that starting with the schedule and the parents drive a lion's share of the $50 billion market, right? And the consumer demand is there, where parents are constantly overwhelmed. I mean, there are funny memes galore on Instagram about this stuff, right? And so we know that the pain is there. We know the consumer demand is there. We are banking on that demand driving eventually, breaking through and creating this interoperability layer.
Now you have Kim Kardashian producing a show about baseball travel moms.
Oh my gosh!
You feel like a great natural advertiser on A&E or wherever it's showing up.
Yeah, I'll get my folks to reach out to the Kardashians and see if we can
see if you can sneak in Onsides app on the Paramount Plus show going on.
That's a great you get that big investment round. It's a good way to spend the marketing dollars.
Hey, there you go.
No, but it is interesting that it's broken through into the zeitgeist. The youth sports parenting has broken into the zeitgeist like that. And I think it just sort of reinforces what you guys are going for, is like, hey, like, we're leading with the parent first, to make this parent-centric and kind of work backwards from there. What's some of the feedback you've gotten during the beta process? What are some things you've learned from customers?
They love the fact that this is a one place to consolidate the schedule, first and foremost. A lot of the feedback that we've gotten that's been really positive is the onboarding, right? We know, it's pretty obvious that youth sports parents are already more often than not underwater with respect to the logistics and the chaos. Asking them to set up another calendar, set up another app is a tall order. And so by design, our onboarding process is extremely straightforward. You just log in, username, password, as you would for these various team apps. And we import and consolidate and organize all that data for you in the backend. That's been the single most positive feedback that we've gotten from parents, is that the onboarding was super easy. It's synced right away with my calendar on my phone. And now I'm managing, 2, 3, 4 apps all from one destination. That's been some of the best feedback that we've gotten. That's one of the things that we really wanted to hone in on during the beta process, was the onboarding flow and how parents are using it. On top of that, we've gotten actually a lot of positive feedback about the private coaching. I think because not that they're immediately jumping on it and saying, I'm going to book all these lessons for my kids. They're starting to see that these add-on services that are still a very important part of youth sports sits naturally on top of the schedule and this one sort of hub. And so that kind of feedback has been almost immediate when we announced it to our beta users before the public launch, is that, it totally makes sense to put things like private coaching and clinics and camps in Onsides. And so I think the excitement of what Onsides will be for them ongoing was also a great piece of feedback.
As you say that, I downloaded the non-beta version earlier and was actually wanted to see if I could do the integration with two of the platforms while you were speaking, and it's done. So
there you go.
To give your point, integrated. That's why I was looking down. Face ID works. So yeah, it works.
It just works. Hey,
it just works.
Sometimes that's half the battle, right? It's gotta just work.
Yeah,
that's something from us coming from the B2C mobile app side. I feel like that gives us a bit of an edge in this space. Is that my co-founder and I came from mobile gaming, where if you don't onboard a user in like a few seconds and get them hooked, like you lose them forever, right? And so we're trying to adopt that level of consumer product.
I was wondering why I had to have this pirate push a rock over the edge before I can log in.
I know, right? You were stressed, right? You gotta work. You got to hurry up and
why am I playing? I'm trying to get my kid's baseball schedule, and all of a sudden I'm playing Tetris. What are you doing to me?
Dave will be bringing registration platform skins to the app anytime soon for about $10 extra.
Hey, everything's on the table, man.
I love it. I love it.
You're going to be at the summit on the startup panel, so looking forward to that. We'll talk about all this and more. Maybe are willing to tease like what's coming down? What's next for you guys? You're live now. You launched. You're out there. Where do you kind of head next? Besides, triaging, I'm sure bugs will come up in 1.0. But what's next?
We're really excited about the partnerships that we're talking. That we're warming up here. The Athletes Untapped is just and the Event Piper, just as I said, it's just the tip of the iceberg. A lot of the potential partners that we've talked to, when they see what we're doing and we're taking that parent first approach, the conversations become like exciting pretty quickly. They see, oh my gosh, this is like a hub for youth sports parents that really doesn't kind of exist out there. So having these ongoing conversations and bringing in all of the necessary facets of youth sports for the parent into Onsides as that all-in-one destination, that's the most exciting thing that we're heads down trying to, make the outreach, have the conversations, and then do the integrations, which, the thing is that we've done a lot of the hard integrations with a lot of these connections for these other team apps. So it's kind of our bread and butter in terms of just being able to bring in these fragments of the sports market very seamlessly and quickly into Onsides. So that's the most exciting thing that I'm looking forward to, is that collaboration as we consolidate the whole market.
Congrats on the launch. I know it's been a 6 months of, a lot of work over 6 months, and before that to get something like this off the ground. So really impressed by what, is being built here. And appreciate you being our first 3-time guest. I feel like we're chronicling your journey here.
I know. I mean, you should have like sort of a leaderboard behind you, like in terms of,
We might have to.
There you go, Kyle. We gotta keep.
We might have to. Don't give this guy any more marketing opportunities or marketing ideas, because I'll have to buy something else from Amazon to put on the back shelf and stuff.
You're gonna need a chalk. You're gonna need one of those things like air traffic controllers have, where they flip the plane. Those like little strips. You ever seen those in like the tower? They got to move those strips like on who's landing next. So that'll be our leaderboard. You just slot. Dave just slotted up number 2.
Is that what our towers are looking like right now? We're doing it that way. I hope
that's
it's more
what they
digital
do.
than that.
There's these little rectangular strips, and they still use. I mean, they have computers, but that's the old-fashioned way. That's what we got to do for our leaderboard. You just hopped, but you were tied with John from Fast Break, right? He was a 2-time guest. We've had a few 2-time guests. God, I'm forgetting who else. But you're number 3. So there you go.
Tyler's another one, right?
Tyler Kreitz, 2-time guest.
Yep. Congratulations, Dave. Honestly, it's been cool to see you build. I know I've only been around for 4 months. Kind of feels like you're building. I think, like you alluded to in the beginning, like building with buying Sandlot a little bit. You talking about how people are realizing, these different opportunities, these different partnerships. I think Kyle, myself, James on the back end, Paul, we're all realizing the same kind of things as people are getting excited about this industry. And like we said, consolidating the industry and more interoperability, it could only help all of us out, especially the customers that we're all trying to to scale with.
Yeah, it's a very emotional and big market, and I think the folks who are going to nail it in terms of that unifying experience, interoperability, are going to really take the market, take the industry by storm.
All right, that was the interview with Dave Yoo. Thanks to him for coming on. Thank you to you, the listener, for staying around. A little bit of a longer one, but we had a lot to talk about. So I hope everybody kind of got their fix. I'm sure they missed your takes, Kyle. They missed your takes, Jane. They missed my takes and all that. And we're happy to be back and doing the show. And we'll come back to you later this week.